Howdy-o, what do you know? This is Rabbit of Scrublead Academy, and this is Lore for Scrubs, Stormreach Edition. The first cities to appear on Eberron following the Age of Demons were built by Titans, precursors to the modern Giants. Actually, the Giants never built anything per se, but their slaves did. After its construction, Stormreach became the epicenter of the ancient Colseer Empire, the largest of all giant civilizations in the Age of Giants. It was soon made Colseer's capital city, responsible for research and development of many unusual eldritch devices. From its creation, Capital City was a target, but like the world following the Age of Demons, it faced no greater enemy than the very giants who ruled it. The Age of Giants was defined by three major events, each one 20,000 years apart from the next. The first, the Giant Uprising, culminated in the year 80,000 BYK, or before the Year of the Kingdom, according to the Kingdom of Galafar's calendar. This event saw the Giants forcefully take over the continent of Zendrick and use Capital City as a center of power for what would become Colseer, enslaving the Eladrin ancestors of the modern-day elves to build and care for their empire. If only there existed some force that could have prevented another oppressive regime. But unfortunately, there was no such force. Thus, the Giants took control without contest, as their incredible size and strength was way too much for the common races to deal with. Colseer grew exponentially following the Teaching, a period of time when the Giants learned the arcane secrets of the Arganessan dragons. One might think they'd grown more benevolent with time to earn such a gift, but nope. The year 60,000 BYK was monumental in shaping the fate they would inevitably suffer as the dragons taught the nascent giants extraordinarily powerful arcane magics that would put the knowledge of modern wizards to shame. But not enough that the dragons couldn't take a good old 2x4, grease it up real nice, and shove it straight up their candy asses. Capital City was the right place for the Giants to test their newfound power, and the Giants worked on secret projects that would gradually make themselves known to the common races millennia after the fall of Colseer. It's the year 40,000 BYK, though, that marked the fall of the Giant Empire, and the beginning of the end for a majority Giant rulership in any continent of Eberron. The invasion of the Quarry, dream-created creatures that have to possess bodies in order to stay manifest in the world of Eberron, was so violent that the Giants had to call upon some of the most dangerous, powerful spells they had been taught in order to force the very realm of Dalcor, the home of the Quarry, away from Eberron. Dalcor, which had since been coterminous with Eberron, to the point where these creatures could just go across the threshold, as it were, was shoved so far away from Eberron that the two realms couldn't even intermingle for thousands of years. However, this extraordinarily violent last-ditch effort to keep the world of dreams from consuming Eberron shattered one of the world's moons and caused damage to Zendrick unseen since the Age of Demons, which had almost torn the world apart. So, not a great move by the Giants. Immediately after the Quarry were defeated, the Colseer Empire shook as its slaves revolted, and other giant empires saw enormous rebellions from the largely elven slaves. Those slaves had seen the Giants bleed, and many elves in particular wanted to know just how deep the wound could be cut. As for the land, the violent quakes ripped whole chunks off Zendrick and sent them into the sea, and societies collapsed as the Giants suffered the backlash of their desperate, foolish magic. The elven slaves, previously taught rudimentary forms of this magic so as to better serve their giant masters, were actually a real match for lesser giant rulers, but no elven heroes or battle groups could even hold a candle to the greater of the cloud and stone giants. Though most of the elven rebellions ended in decisive, one might say pathetic failure, a few actually managed to gain traction with the locals, and it was only a matter of time before Colseer, built on the backs of slave labor, collapsed when it found that there were no more slaves to keep it running. Colseer's magicians decided that they had to use desperate tactics again. The spells they had access to were ancient and are still unknown, and Arganessan hasn't given them out since. For good reason. The Giants chose to turn that wild fringe magic back on the elves, hoping either to subdue them or kill them trying. But Arganessan, finally cleaning up their mess, caught wind that the reckless giant rulers were about to repeat their mistake, a mistake that could cost the entire world this time. Arganessan came over, kicked the shit out of them, and scorched the remainder of Colseer, blasting the Giants themselves back into primitiveness and laying malicious curses on the land that would rack the minds and bodies of the few Giants who survived the attack. It was meant to be a burned earth strategy. It was meant to be absolute destruction. But it didn't really turn out that way. Oddly, despite the razing of Kul Sir, Capital City was left almost eerily intact, as if the dragons had intentionally avoided it. And intact it remained for some time, abandoned, cold, and desolate. Some refugees from Kul Sir tried to reclaim Capital City, giants that were comparable to modern hill giants, but there was something there now. Something that lurked far beneath the surface of the land. The massive tunnels beneath Capital City, established during the height of the Kul Sir Empire, whispered something subtle and malignant. A few giants who'd taken refuge in Capital City fled, as their comrades lashed out and struck down many of their own settlers. The bloodshed during this time was so brutal, evidence of that attack exists to this day. It would be thousands of years before evidence emerged of the Sahuagin arriving in Capital City, hoping to create a fortress through which to rule all of the adjoining Thunder Sea. The Sahuagin by this time had become the de facto sea holders of most of northern Zendrik, and even as the common races attempted to pillage or explore, the Sahuagin would dominate the region for millennia. Their time in Capital City, though, was short-lived. The Fallen Stone Giant faction, racked by the fall of their empires, were still an incredible threat. The Sahuagin couldn't keep up with them, but even behind the protective walls of Capital City, they couldn't find any refuge. Whispers, quiet proddings, and more nefarious influences pricked at the minds of the Sahuagin. Soon they realized that the real enemy wasn't the warband catapulting rocks over the walls, but the voices inside of them. When the Stone Giants came to Capital City one day, bent on continuing their assault, they found no opposition. They came to a city abandoned, and the quiet eerily whistled through the streets. Still, it was no longer under enemy control. It was theirs, and they took it. It could have been as few as 5 years. Evidence of giant camps still exists in Capital City, but any major renovations in the style of known stone giant clans does not. There are records aplenty that hideous plagues eventually caused the stone giants to either escape or die, but little else to remember this short-lived occupation. However, as lazy as giants are, one would expect evidence of slave labor as well, which, as far as archaeologists and scholars can tell, doesn't exist during this time. The Thrakreen, bug mantis things, tried to seize Capital City as well, much to the same lack of success. Their failure doesn't appear to be brought about by anything more obvious than just simple attacks, Sahuagin, kobolds, and the like. It's theorized that whatever had been there at this time had faded, but there was no evidence one way or another. It's possible that whatever had repulsed the other settlers still exists in the caverns of the Subterrane, a section beneath Stormreach that consists of almost endless tunnels and chambers. But with the enormity of the Subterrane, only time will tell. As for the Thrakreen, widespread belief holds that a few persevered and made the sewers their home, where they continue to fight troglodytes, kobolds, and, other creatures, just to stay alive. That's the bulk of Capital City's history until the age of pirates. Though not officially recognized as an age of the common races, during this time piracy emerged as the primary means of excavation, and treasure seekers plumed its shores and ruins for items of great wealth, dragon shards among them. Pirate and Sahuagin attacks were common, violent affairs that cost the newly interested dragon-marked houses extraordinary amounts of money. The area was so lucrative, 4 pirate lords took interest in Capital City as a permanent base of operations, an outpost for them to set up shop and not have to travel the Thunder Sea in order to make their money. These pirate lords, who called themselves Storm Lords, you would know them as the Coin Lords, were Delira Omaran, Yorick Amanatu, Malu Lasite, and Collis Salshadra. The power struggles between the dragon-marked houses, the pirate lords, and a slew of other interested factions eventually led to the Kingdom of Galafar's declaration of Capital City as a sovereign state via the Stormreach Compact, which allowed Capital City to be placed under the control of the recently pardoned Stormlords. Alongside these Stormlords would be appointed a 5th, Yolan Wilkes. Galafar wanted somebody who wasn't a complete criminal to be a means of keeping the Stormlords in check, but at this point, it was a needless gesture. The Stormlords now had a complete monopoly over the goods being transferred between Capital City and Corvair, and settling down was exactly what they had in mind. And that brings us to the modern age, which has no official name. Some have taken to calling it the Age of Adventurers. Whether this will be the last, the greatest, or just another page in the bloody book of Capital Cities history is still unknown. But that's a story for another time. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the like button and share this video everywhere you can, and don't forget to hit that notification button to stay up to date on all posted content. If you're up for exploring, I have a channel on Odyssey, a YouTube alternative, and you can always stop by my Twitter, Discord, or Twitch to see what's going on there. Basically, just click everything in the description and go adventuring. It's the right age for that kind of stuff. If you disagreed with anything I said, or have something you'd like to add, don't be shy, drop a comment. Finally, if you'd like to see more Dito lore, you know how to let me know. And the story, well, the story will go on. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.